Chapter 4. Tom Gray watched the counter on his laptop as it crept towards 200. The freelance programmer who had created the bespoke software had explained that when a new visitor arrived at the website, it captured their IP address and other items and emailed it to his inbox. His email software then dumped it in a folder which was monitored by a component that checked for new items. It extracted the information and fed it into a web service, which then fed it into a database and displayed the results on the screen, refreshing the view every few seconds. In layman's terms, if someone visited the website, Gray would know about it and have a good idea who and where they were. 40 minutes had passed since Gray had contacted the BBC and Sky News, and as no one else in the world knew about the website, he thought it safe to assume that the first visitors would be the news outlets, the government, and the intelligence service. He flicked back and forth between the BBC News and Sky News until he saw the first of the breaking news tickers scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Gray checked his watch and saw that his prediction was out by 3 minutes, which was no big deal. It simply meant he would record more IP addresses than anticipated. If the security services hadn't visited by now, they never would. With the IP addresses recorded, he would now be able to filter out any votes coming from the same range. In considering possible ploys against him, he had reasoned that the authorities might send a few million emails with the word "live" to rig the vote, but his software would disregard any votes coming from the recorded IP addresses or any within a certain range. In addition, with the click of a button, he could redirect any requests for his website from these IP addresses to any other page on the internet. His choice had been to redirect them to a page on the number10.gov.uk petitions website, which was asking the government to reintroduce the death penalty. Gray also considered the fact that they might try a few different ways to influence the results, but this had also been factored in when he had commissioned the software. He settled down to watch the news, wondering how long it would take the talking heads to brand him a terrorist. He didn't have to wait long. News is just reaching us that a former SAS soldier is threatening to kill thousands of people unless the government allows him to execute 5 suspected criminals live on the internet. A photo of Gray appeared on the screen next to the female anchor, a picture he recognised from his army days. Tom Gray, who spent 8 years in 22 Regiment, Special Air Service, has demanded that the government allow him to poll the nation to decide whether or not his captives should live or die. According to a video shown on his website, www.justiceforbritain.co.uk, if the government does not allow him to collect and act on the votes sent in by members of the public, he will kill his prisoners and take his own life. If he does this, police will have little or no chance of finding his bomb. The camera angle changed to show a live video feed on the studio wall. A grey-haired man in his 50s with heavy jowls and a ruddy complexion waited patiently for his introduction. We're joined now by Home Office spokesman Adrian Good. Mr. Good, thank you for joining us. What is the Home Office's response to this terrorist threat? Gray watched the spokesman spend 4 minutes talking a lot but saying absolutely nothing, promising that the government was doing everything within their power to protect the public while giving no indication as to how it would do this. Questions were thrown at him, and he answered with prepared statements, never once deviating from the script. It was just what Gray had expected. He turned his attention to his laptop and waited for the votes to start coming in. Andrew Harvey walked into the technical operations office and made his way straight to Gerald Small's workstation. "What have we got?" he asked. Small continued tapping at his keyboard as he explained their progress. "We have the website host. It's a UK company based in Guildford, and he's either too dumb to know how to hide its location, or he doesn't care. Or maybe he wants us to find it," Harvey suggested. What else? We have gained access to the website's source code. It's written in a programming language I'm familiar with, and so far I've discovered a couple of interesting bits of code. Small brought up the first page. This area here checks to see if it is operating within a date and time range. That range was a couple of minutes before the first call to the BBC and ended 45 minutes later. It has collected details of every visitor during that time and sent the details to Gray's email address. What he has done with that information we don't know, but he wanted it for a reason. If he knows our IP address, he can block or monitor our visits. Small nodded. Among other things. What about using a different terminal? Harvey asked. We access the outside world via a proxy server, so no matter which terminal you use, it will always show the IP address of the proxy. What we can do is use a different connection. He shuffled his chair to another terminal and opened a command prompt. After typing for a few moments, he declared the job done. This terminal uses our failover connection and doesn't use a proxy. It will show up as a residential account if he ever digs that deep. Excellent, Harvey said. So we have anonymous access. What options do we have now? Small shuffled back to his own terminal and brought up another screen of code. This function calls a web service that brings back the results of the votes. And noticing the blank look from Harvey, he dumbed it down. A web service is a way for two websites to talk to each other. The results are going to another server in South Africa, one we don't have access to. This code here calls that other website and asks it to send the results. This means that if we want to manipulate the results, we could do it here as the results come back. We could easily add 30% to the number of die votes and show this as the number of live votes. That way, none of them are killed. Harvey looked sceptical. I'm worried that he is making this too easy for us. What other options are there? Well, Small said, rubbing the back of his neck, we could intercept all emails going to his inbox and delete every third one that says die before he receives it, I suppose. Harvey thought about it for a moment. OK, that's plan A. Let me know if you come up with anything else. He returned to his own desk and called Hammond to pass on the news. John Hammond followed the Home Secretary into his office and took the seat offered. The late spring sun hit him square in the face as he sat down, and he had to lean to his left to avoid its glare and see Stephen Wells. Hammond was sure the chair had been strategically positioned for just this effect.
John, the PM isn't happy that this has been sprung upon him, especially with the general election just 6 weeks away. He wants to know what we are doing about it.
Hammond's relationship with Wells had been long and fractious, and he knew that if things went badly, there would be no we. Even if things went their way, it would be the Home Secretary who took all the glory, while MI5 would get a brief mention if they were lucky. Minister, we have our best resources working on it. As we see it, the priority is locating the device he mentioned. Without that, we cannot make a move on him.
Do you know where he is?
The Home Secretary asked. Not yet. As I said, our priority is locating the device. There is little point in finding Gray and his captives if we can't make a move on him. So while we have a few people searching for his location, our best efforts are concentrating on possible civilian targets. He claims to be targeting thousands of lives, so that narrows it down a bit. We are concentrating on venues that will have large visitor numbers at midday on Friday, and we are in contact with local police forces who are searching all possible targets.
Do you think this man is capable of killing thousands of innocent people?
Does he know how to create a device capable of killing thousands? Possibly. I'd even go as far as to say probably. Does he have the resolve to detonate it? That's another matter. Wells leaned forward onto his desk and clasped his hands together.
John, I don't have to tell you how serious it would be if this maniac executes a young man live on the internet, criminal or not.
He glanced at his watch.
It's just after midday, giving you 7.5 hours to stop this happening. Find Gray, find his bomb. Do whatever you need to do, but put a stop to this. And without loss of life, if you don't mind.
We may have more time than that, Hammond told him. On the way over here, I spoke to my team. Our techies have access to his website, and we have identified a couple of ways to manipulate his figures. If we can swing the vote our way, we might be able to save the life of the first one.
Might?
If he has checks in place to ensure we don't tamper with the site, he will spot us messing with the results. But my team is confident that they can intercept negative votes before they hit his system.
How confident?
There are no guarantees, if that's what you mean, but the alternative is to just let the votes come in and hope the people of Britain have faith in the justice system. Wells stared at him for a moment, then said,
Do it.
Chapter 5. Hamad Farsi placed 2 thick files on Andrew Harvey's desk and waited for him to finish his phone call. "Gray?" Harvey asked, after hanging up. Farsi nodded. "The top one's his MOD jacket, and the other is what we have on him. Nothing much until 6 months ago. Then it all kicks off. Sells his business for just over $1 million cash, when it was worth twice as much. He also sold his house for 50 grand under the asking price, obviously looking for a quick sale. Again, it was a cash transaction. After that, he went on a spending spree." Farsi flicked through the file and pointed out Gray's current account balance.
"Only 3,000 left? What the hell did he spend it on?"
"Good question," Farsi said. "We have payments to his web hosting company for a dedicated web server and email exchange server, plus a wire transfer for 50,000 to a software company in South Africa. There's 180 grand to a security firm in Hounslow, and apart from 20,000 to a software contractor here in London, the rest of the withdrawals were in cash."
"Have you managed to track down the contractor?" Harvey asked.
"He contacted us. Or should I say he called the police. He recognised his website and apparently didn't know what he was signing up for. I'm going over there in 10 minutes. What do you think Gray did with the rest of the cash?"
"Well, £1 million will get you a nice amount of C4 if you know the right people. And in his line of work, he will probably know the right people. Speaking of which, where's the list of acquaintances?"
"Towards the front of the file. We have a list of the people he recruited through his company, and Diane is compiling a condensed version based on his phone and email records over the last 60 days. Harvey skimmed through the file until he came across the mobile phone records. The first rule of investigation was to try the obvious. He dialed the number of Gray's phone and was surprised when he got a response after 2 rings. "Hello?"
"Is this Tom Gray?" Harvey asked.
"Speaking." Harvey put his hand over the receiver and mouthed, "It's him."
"My name is Andrew Harvey, calling from Thames House."
"Hello, Andrew. I expected you to call a lot sooner than this. Call me back on my other phone after 2 minutes. He gave Harvey a new number and broke the connection. 90 seconds later, Harvey rang Gray again. "Thanks. Too many people know my number or know how to get it, and I don't want interruptions all day long."
"So, what's this all about, Mr. Gray?"
Harvey handed the post-it note containing the new number to Farsi, who nodded and took it over to Lane's desk so that she could contact her liaison at General Command Headquarters. GCHQ's communications capabilities far outstripped those of Thames House, and it wouldn't be long before they could get a location from the number. "Call me Tom. And what it's about is justice for British people, doing what the government has been promising for 20 years now, protecting the innocent and punishing criminals.
We have a judicial system to take care of that, Tom. What you are doing is not going to change anything.
Yes, it will,
Gray told him.
The government has a duty to listen to the people. I am just making sure it hears what is being said.
Tom, people have tried for years to change things using terror tactics, and it hasn't worked. You should know. You used to be on our side of the fight.
Yes, I noticed it didn't take long to brand me a terrorist. But what options did I have? I could have let it go and accepted the fact that my wife and son are dead and that Stuart Boyle had been punished. But that would mean living a lie, because he hasn't been punished. Did you know that he has been arrested 3 times since my son's death, each time for driving a stolen vehicle?
No, I didn't know that, Harvey admitted. I haven't seen his file yet.
Does it sound like he has learned his lesson? I don't think so. He can't claim to have accidentally stolen 3 more cars because that's something you choose to do.
I agree that he deserves a more severe punishment, but that is not for us to decide, Tom. If everyone took the law into their own hands, there would be anarchy. You know that. We have to let the courts decide. That's what they're there for. If you feel badly enough, start a legitimate campaign to get the law changed. It has worked for others in the past, and with your record in the services, people would listen.
People are listening now, Andrew, and I don't have to spend years fighting an uphill battle while reliving the pain of my family's passing every day.
There was silence for a moment, and Harvey sensed Gray was once again thinking of his family. He waited for him to continue, rather than interrupting his private moment.
I also considered grabbing him off the street, you know,
Gray continued after almost a minute.
Taking him somewhere nice and quiet and killing him ever so slowly. Trust me, I thought of that many, many times. But then, his death would have got a brief mention on the news and nothing would have changed. There would be plenty more Stuart Boyles to replace him.
I still don't think this is the way, Tom.
Andrew, I appreciate that you have a job to do, and that job is to stop me. But I won't be talked out of this. I accepted your call because I wanted to let you know that trying to mount a rescue would be a bad idea. Apart from the fact that you won't get the location of the device, you will be risking the lives of anyone you send. I know that you will be able to pinpoint my location from the cell phone I'm using, and it's only a matter of time before you turn up mob-handed. But I warn you that I've had a few weeks to prepare my defences. I have early warning systems set up around the perimeter, including motion sensors and infrared cameras, so I will know if anyone gets too close. The area around the facility is mined with only one way in or out of the building. If you send in people to clear the mines, I can pick them off. The roof is covered in razor wire, motion sensors, and a few other surprises, making an aerial assault tricky. Even if someone did manage to get in, they will have to take me alive, and I will have plenty of warning, which means plenty of time to kill these 5 and take my own life. This will be done live on the internet, and I will let people know the reason why. The government will then have to explain why they opted to save the lives of 5 criminals at the expense of thousands.
OK, Tom, I understand your position.
Good. I'll be in touch.
The phone went dead. Harvey returned it to his pocket on his way to Fazi's desk. We have the location. It's an old factory. Sussex Renaissance Potteries, according to the coordinates GCHQ gave me. SO15 are on their way over there as we speak. Call them, Harvey said, and tell them to hang back and observe from a distance. He told me he has prepared his defences, and I don't doubt it. After you've spoken to them, get on to the security firm and see what he spent 180 grand on. He had a feeling it wasn't anything that was going to aid their cause. Tom Gray turned to his array of monitors
and checked that each was functioning properly. All 12 screens returned a full-colour image, and he toggled each between visible light and infrared. Once he was satisfied that they were all working as required, he turned his attention to the motion sensor display. All 30 sensors in and around the perimeter were listed, and each had a green tick next to their designation to signify that a test signal was being sent and received every second. Should one sensor not respond to a sent signal, a red cross would appear, and an audible warning would alert him. With the equipment in working order, he figured he had at least an hour before any police turned up at his location, and his warning to Andrew Harvey would prevent them from rushing in. With time to kill, he turned his attention to feeding the prisoners. This was done by wheeling a trolley up to each boy's chest so that he could reach the food by craning his neck. Gray could have released one of their hands to let them eat properly, but he decided that if they chose to behave like animals, they could eat like animals too. The food was basic: tinned potatoes and spam, neither of which he had bothered to heat through. He pushed the trolley up to the first of the boys, Simon Arkin, and removed the tape over his mouth. "Eat," he ordered. "Why are you doing this?" Arkin asked, more than a touch of anxiety in his voice. "What have I ever done to you?" "Nothing. You did nothing to me, but that's only because I'm not from Manchester. I'm sure that if I lived within 5 miles of you, you would have had no hesitation in nicking my car or breaking into my house." Gray studied him for a moment. "How many houses did you break into?" Arkin averted his eyes as he calculated his answer. 28, he eventually said. "You see, that's the problem, Simon. You tell me it's 28, but that's how many convictions you have for burglary. That means you either just lied to me, or you got caught every time you burgled a house. And if you got caught every time, it would have sunk in after the first 3 or 4, and you wouldn't have bothered with the other 20-odd, would you?" Arkin kept his head bowed, taking it as a rhetorical question. "So which is it? Were you lying to me about the number of burglaries, or are you really so stupid that you got caught every time and yet kept doing it?" "About 300, Arkin finally admitted. "But it wasn't just me." "I know. I read your record. So why didn't you give the others up when you got caught? The police knew you weren't acting alone, but they were unable to force you to give up the names of the people who were with you. That's what I'm going to change. As for you, did you ever spare a thought for your victims? Did you ever stop to think how it might impact them?" "They were all insured, so they didn't lose anything," Arkin came back, a little too quickly to make the reply sound spontaneous. It was obvious to Gray that it was a line he spouted to all who questioned his career choice, be they the police or social workers. "Well, let me tell you something about insurance companies, Simon. They don't get a call saying, 'I've been burgled,' and run round to replace everything. They do all they can to put the blame on the homeowner, trying to prove that they were at fault for making it easy for the burglar. For example, if you opened a front door, grabbed the keys of a brand new Mercedes and drove it away, the insurance company will say the blame lies with the homeowner for not securing the keys properly. They lose their 40 grand motor and don't get a penny back." Gray placed a cup of water next to Arkin's plate and popped a straw in so that he could drink from it. "You know, it's ironic that you never spared a thought for your victims, because now there are 300 families out there about to vote on whether you live or die. Not just them, but their friends and families too. That's thousands of people, all voting, and I don't think many will be asking for you to be set free to heap more misery on them. Oh, and don't forget everyone else in the country who has been burgled in their lifetime. I don't think you can count on their votes either." Gray left Arkin to his banquet, satisfied with the look of impending doom on his face. He wheeled a trolley into the next cell and again removed the tape from the young man's mouth. "Why are you doing this to me?" his prisoner asked. Faced with the prospect of repeating his little speech, Gray said, "Shut up, dickhead, and eat your dinner." Once the prisoners had been fed and watered, he took a stroll around the outside of the building. The factory had once produced earthenware and stood in its own grounds. He had chosen it because it sat well back from the main road, affording him plenty of notice should anyone approach. The sole remaining building was 2 stories high and in pretty good repair. Most of the windows had been smashed, and Gray had broken the others before boarding them up, using 2-inch thick planks. 30 yards of ground had been cleared around all 4 sides of the structure, creating a wide field for an attacking force to cross without cover. Apart from the chance of being picked off by Gray, they would have to negotiate waist-high razor wire and numerous motion sensors, not to mention the anti-personnel mines. Beyond the open ground, there were swathes of knee-high grass and the remnants of the other factory buildings that once stood proud, but were now reduced to rubble. If anyone wanted to mount an attack, there was little in the way of protection within 150 yards of the building. After checking the perimeter, he returned to the building and began removing the feeding trolleys from the cells, which had once been walk-in kilns. At the first cell, Arkin asked to go to the toilet. "You're sitting on a commode, so just go when you need to. It will get a bit uncomfortable after a while, but this will all be over in 5 days, if not sooner." He placed a new strip of tape over Arkin's mouth as he began to protest, and went to tend to the prisoner in the next cell.